So you want to be rich. I mean, we all do. It's not a bad thing, because while money doesn't buy happiness, it can buy things that make you happy. But let me ask you a question. What does being rich look like to you? I'm asking because I see an increasing trend of people throwing away their futures and their savings just to look rich on social media. And it's often done by buying obscene amounts of stuff from luxury brands. And I personally find that kind of interesting because why? Alright, here's the thing. There are people who buy these things because, they think they are cool. And I am not against that, not a little bit. Often more expensive things are nice and actually better than the cheaper counterparts. And I'm also not against buying things that make you happy. But there are also people who buy them so they can flex their wealth to others. And if you are in that second category, maybe don't do that. Outside of it being sad and kind of cringe, to be honest, there's also the fact that it just looks stupid to actually rich people. Because flexing only works if you do that to people who are below you. Economically, for example. Because if I flexed a 2008 Hyundai Getz, you would probably feel weird. Because, you can buy that yourself. It's simply not that impressive and not out of your reach. Basically what I'm trying to say is that people who flex their Lamborghini and Birkin bags may look cool and rich to you, but to people who also made enough money to own these things, it just looks sad and pathetic. Because from their perspective, a couple of questions just arise. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to prove to strangers that you are rich? And is there something that you are hiding? And to answer the last question, most likely yes. Because the guy with a car, mansion and clothes with enough logos to make Times New Square thing inadequate might not actually own these things. And that's because it's simply very easy to pretend to be rich on social media. You can, simply go into debt for these things. Or if you don't want to do that, you can simply buy empty boxes from these brands. Yeah, I also wish I was joking here. That's genuinely sad. Like, who's buying these things? As I said, it's very easy to pretend to be rich, but people underestimate how easy it is. You can rent sport cars for a couple of hours, or even better, buy tours with them. You can easily rent mansions for a night, and you can also just buy these things and return them later. And let's not get into the fact that these items can be very easily fake. It can be basically impossible to tell from a photo. And now, if you saw these photos, you would reasonably assume that I am, rich. But no, it's all lies and deception. So while it looks as if I was doing better than you, I might actually be in a very bad situation. And while some of these posts can be real, I mean some people are actually rich enough to afford these things, vast majority is not. And that's simply because rich people don't really live like that. I mean millionaires that want a lot of attention, maybe. But let me ask you a question. When was the last time when you saw an actually rich person that isn't a celebrity or influencer living like this and wearing these clothes? Which, by the way, they often look ridiculous. And I know that fashion is subjective, but this just screams a lack of personality to me. But alright, again, tell me when was the last time you saw a rich person looking like this? Exactly. In a lot of cases you could easily have a multi-millionaire next to you and not even realize it. Because these people most often don't have really anything to prove to you. Their fellow rich people, maybe. But even if they do, they probably won't buy these items. And that's because these brands are actually not for rich people. They are what I would myself call poor luxury. AKA poor person's understanding of what being rich look like. I mean, if they were actually luxury, way less people would own them. And there is also the fact that rich people live in a world that is completely different from ours. For example, they have their own clothing brands that you probably never heard of. For example, Stefano Ricci. You probably never heard of them, and even if you did, you wouldn't be able to afford them. And all of these are still fairly mainline ones. I'm 100% sure that there is some random Italian brand that makes t-shirts for like $1 million each. So why do so many people buy things that aren't actually for rich people? Well, it's pretty simple. Flexing doesn't work if people who see it don't know what to be so impressed about. It's all marketing, plain and simple. These things only work because we recognize them as symbols of wealth and success, and therefore are marketed as something that we can aspire towards. Most influencers won't buy actual rich people things because the audience won't recognize it. So not only they won't be impressed, but they also will question the money management. Despite the fact that owning all of these things, it's also pretty bad financial decision. Because who the hell needs all this stuff? No one. No one needs that. All for show. Very often these people make money by showing that they have money. But that is assuming that they made any money from it. So while they seem as better off than you, it might not actually be the truth. They might actually be worse off than you, at least long term. And this not only has a lot of consequences, but it's also an important part that fuels this entire system. So hey, let's talk about it. So when it comes to reasons why people are like this, we must mention two things: social media and lack of cope. I already mentioned influencers pretending to be rich on social media, but they are a bigger part of this whole problem than you might actually imagine, because they not only show that this is how you can get attention, but also that this is how success and wealth is supposed to look like. And since their bigger audience are usually teens and young adults, they fall from it, simply because, you know, young people want to be cool and fit in. Look at me talking as if I wasn't 18 myself. I am younger than most people doing this, you know? But whatever, because the problem is that many people think if they can own this shirt, this bar or this hat, they will be considered successful. Because who cares if you throw away your retirement savings and are in debt? The random people on social media tell you how rich and successful you are. So this is all that matters. And the reason for this whole behavior is the fact that we, as humans, want to be simply perceived as successful. And that comes from the fact that we equate money with worth. We don't want to be seen as worthless. We want to be seen as important people that actually mean something, and not some random people you see on the street. And obviously, we all do it in different ways, but the image that these brands have created for themselves made it look like this is the only way, when very often they are not. They just made the issue of not being actually rich way worse. Because spending $1,000 on a jacket is not really a good financial decision. And that is even if you want a quality item. And this is again why you rarely see non-social media millionaires have these things. Because buying these clothes and cars will actually just make them poorer. Yeah, because what we consider a sign of wealth is a rather bad financial decision actually. Spending 200 grand on a car that is basically just a large toy is not something that I would consider a good idea. Because while it's true that to make money you have to spend money, it's talking about investments and starting a business and not buying a random Supreme hat. So even for relatively rich people, this is just a way to lose money. But I think that this was pretty obvious. I mean, we all know that if you spend money, you don't have it. But the reason why all these social media posts work is because we assume that they spend only a small portion of their wealth and that they didn't just rent it or went into debt for this. Though it is kind of amazing on how many people never question why these self-made millionaires have a 100% legit course on how to be like them. But this is both a reason for the state of things and also a consequence. Because the underlying reason for all of this is what I would describe simply as lack of hope. So here's the thing. Cost of living is going up and the wages tend not to keep up. This is not debatable in any way, shape or form. The cost of houses, for example, has skyrocketed and therefore it seems like a dream to even own one day. And because of that, many young people, again the ancient one speaking here, are giving up. So instead of saving up for a house or retirement, they just spend it all on things that are here and now, and they don't worry for a future in any way, shape or form. And it's not even about clothes or cars anymore. This is a pretty big systematic issue that covers basically everything. Though connected to that is the fact that a lot of people simply want to have money here and now. This is why get-rich-quick scams exist. They are very much not a modern invention, but with the rise of social media they definitely exploded. And of course, again, social media is to blame a lot here, because if we see people in their 20s or even younger becoming millionaires, we kind of lose hope. I mean, Forbes 30 under 30 is a thing. That puts pressure on people, you know? Because when you see that, let's be honest here, a kid makes more than you ever will, you get extremely jealous. And when you see that you can do that yourself, you simply start losing hope. And when we combine that with the aforementioned rising prices, the live now, worry later mentality starts to make a lot more sense. And of course, companies that make this stuff know this all. I mean, marketing departments are generally pretty good at their job. And that's why these fins are, for example, expensive, but not too expensive for a regular person. But more importantly, they market themselves using live now, worry later mentality. Because today, everything seems to be a luxury. And it doesn't matter what it is, people will buy it as long as it has this magical word on it. I mean, I literally ate a pasta from Lidl that marketed itself as luxury and premium. So I don't know what this says about the state of things. Oh, before I go into conclusion, I should mention a couple of important things. The first thing is, well, we all have different priorities. So while I'm obviously not into fashion and stuff, I still can understand why someone would buy this. I am into photography and Warhammer. Spending a lot of money is not foreign to me. You can, and if you want, you should, still buy them. Just save up for them, instead of brute facing your way through. Or to make the message even simpler, don't live above your means. This way you should be fine. And the other thing that you need to remember, don't go the other way, because there is nothing more expensive than a cheap car. Cheap things are cheap for a reason. So buying more expensive option might actually be a better thing, even if we look at the long term. Whether it's for durability, comfort or convenience. Don't be afraid to have some fun. Life isn't all about the money after all. Just have some self-control so you won't regret this in the future. So yeah, it's a hard topic without any real easy solutions. When it comes to social aspects, all I will say is to have more confidence. And I am not talking about completely not caring about what other thinks. That's psychotic behavior. But just remember that you have worth, even if you don't own all of these things. Because you don't have to prove anything. Most people don't care about this stuff. And some might actually hate you doing this. So while again I am not discouraging you from buying these things, just be yourself in the end. But the hope part is way more complex. So all I will say is to have hope, work harder and try to improve yourself. Because otherwise things will get only worse. Putting your head in the ground and being a doomer about everything is not a good way to live your life. And as I mentioned before, if you give up, nothing changes, so at least try. So anyway, that was a complex topic. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. See ya, bye!